It's Roger, Mudfossil University, today discussing something I just saw on TV, which was called Closer to the Truth. And the speaker goes around and talks to all of the learned scholars about the meaning of faith and so forth. Well, let me just tell you something right now. If you want to get closer to the truth, before you can even get close to reality, that's a dragon. Now, if you want, and that dragon is gigantic. This is his throat right here. And those are dragon scales. And that dragon scaled throat runs for hundreds of miles. Alright, now if you can see something different than dragon scales here, and if you can see something different than the fluty little markings that they have on the side of dragons, swish, 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 and all that fuzzy stuff going down. And if you don't see a dragon there, and if you want to turn your head and walk away and leave the truth, well, then that's up to you. I do want to get closer to the truth, and I've been trying to make contact on that particular situation, and I'm not being acknowledged. So, to get closer to the truth, you're going to have to get closer to this. That's a dragon, and that dragon is so huge. This is his head, this is his body, that's his legs, this is his back, and the tail runs all the way out almost into the Mediterranean. It is 1,000 miles long. And this is the other end of his dragon tail, which is laying right here and decomposing in the desert very recently. You see that? That's the runoff. You go to a corner, you say, how long has that thing been dead if it just leaked that far away from its dead, decomposing body? Which it has, because the other end of its dead, decomposing body is up here, and it is of the same situation. And I think I found where it was actually killed, and there is actually statements in the ancient texts that say he was slain with a sword, a great and mighty sword. And that cut right there, and that led all this blood leaked out, and all this black blood and red blood. That is the signature of death. This right here is the signature of death and decomposition. And that is a giant dragon, so let's get closer to truth. You got to get closer to that. And that giant dragon spit something on this giant fish. You're looking at what I can show you. You have Google Earth. Go look at yourself. So you want truth? This is truth. Let's see who wants truth. You see what this dragon's spitting out here? You see that? Nothing is hidden that will not be revealed. That crashed into here. It exploded chemically. I don't know if it exploded in fire, but that is some serious chemistry. Boom! That is where it hit the fish's fin. This is the fish's fin. And there is statements in history about this. Now, it invaded the vital flesh and killed that. And these are the scales. I believe this is the eye, and that is something different than an eye. I believe this is the eye. But anyway, somebody can go up here and look and play around, figure out what it is. And all this ran off across Atlantis, which is the eye of the Sahara, and into the Atlantic Ocean. And this, I have gone in and literally found all of the different channels and the boat slips and the docks and everything that are in here. So, and this is also the straits right up here that they claim was what collapsed and caused this catastrophe. Or this was actually here, but I don't know if it caused it or not. But it was outside the straits, they said. Now, let's talk about getting closer to the truth. Let's go and see what it's got to say over on the Closer to the Truth. Okay, this is a bunch of videos that were done on PBS by Robert Lawrence Kuhn, and very, very good. He's interviewed all kinds of people. And is atheism a new faith? Religious faith, rational or rationalization? Now, we're going to look into this one for a minute, and because you've seen the dragon and the fish. Now, those were things that were written. Here's another one. How is God the creator? You know, let's talk about what's real and what isn't. Faith, rational, or rationalization. These are things that the God Part 1, Part 2, atheism, a new faith, arguing God's existence. It's very, very, very good, and you should. And there's like 200 of them, and they're short. All right, this is Mr. Kuhn interviewing Jeff Schloss about religious faith, rational, irrational, or rationalization. In other words, we just going along with this because we think it's got to be blind religious faith? Well, listen to what he has to say. I'm going to cut in and out where there's things that are meaningful.
Jeff, I'd like to believe in God, and because of my background, I search for scientific evidence, and many people tell me that I'm looking in the wrong direction. I have to have faith, and faith is believing in something without the evidence. So I really have to wonder, is faith rational, or is it rationalization?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I like how you put it. I would say it's probably a little of either in different people.
Okay, the way I see his statements, you can go back and watch it. It's only 9 minutes long, but he's like wishy-washy. Is there a God? I don't know. Who knows? There's no evidence. They can say one thing, and I can see the opposite, and they can say that, and they can see the opposite. So here he goes. Now he says, I'm profoundly engaged in this. So let's watch what he has to say about it.
After the experience, what do you make of it? And there...
in other words, he's saying after you get profoundly engaged in this, and you basically, when you get confused, what do you make out of this whole thing? Here he goes.
The beliefs that an experience like that generate have to prove fruitful in understanding the world. So there is the case where I wouldn't say rationalization, but I would say post hoc reasoning became extremely important. And now the question arises, okay, so how do you know, and this is the really important religious question, I think, is how do you distinguish between post hoc reasoning, or maybe even post hoc theory or assumption testing, versus rationalization? And by the way, we do the former in science all the time, right? This Popperian view of science that...
Right.
So
when he's saying that, they do it all the time in science. They just make assumptions, and then they just add a little of this, add a little of that, and they never seem to understand that the basis that they're making these assumptions on is wrong. Just like this guy. He doesn't know about the dragon, doesn't know about the fish, doesn't know about the ancient texts, never considered them to be anything of value, doesn't understand that giants are huge giants that were on Earth exactly what they said. So let's see what he has to say, not knowing any of this stuff.
Really core beliefs. If something doesn't work out, we invent ancillary hypotheses, and at some point in both science and religious belief, it doesn't work.
Absolutely doesn't work, and it doesn't work in science, and it's not working in religion. They didn't take into account the basic fundamentals of everything.
And then we abandon a belief, or
That's
we
the tragedy.
modify it, or we live with ambiguity, and or it does work. But what I'm suggesting, back to your original question, I don't think religious belief is fundamentally either a rationalization or rational in the sense of coming into it by proof.
See, exactly. There's no proof to him because they will not examine the Mudfossil evidence, which proves exactly what they want to say to hear if they want to get closer to the truth. So, why I'm not being acknowledged, I have no idea. But I'm just going to keep, and I think you guys should send this to people and say, well, look at this. This makes sense.
But I think it is rational in the larger sense of rationality. That is to say, starting with givens, with an assumption, with fundamental commitments, and then trying to understand life through the rational entailments of those starting positions.
That's the problem. The starting positions are wrong. All right, so what you should do is go up here and watch this. But this is the problem. The starting positions cannot be challenged. Einstein has no clothes. Light is particles that come from the sun. Obviously, they're particles. They come spinning through space unseen because there's nothing for them to smash into. They eventually smash into the atmosphere of the Earth or your face and give you sunburn, or it pushes electrons through. They're particles. They're particles. And I've proven this with the light experiments I did with Rodney Warren. It's just so obvious. They cannot, and it's the ether that is in space, and that is the dark matter that they're looking for. Light is dark matter. When it's on its transit from the sun to here, it's obviously particles. It's obviously going through space. It's obviously dark and unseen. It obviously smashes into something when it hits here. It is obviously has a mass. Einstein was wrong. So, and electron flood theory covers the whole thing. It really solves everything in physics. There's no neutrons. There's nothing that smashes into, that collects in the core of anything that's neutral, roll away. It's flooded with electrons until it exceeds the core's neutrality, and then there is an excessive negativity in the core. Then everything collects and congeals around the core in orbitals, in precise little orbitals, and I have them in pictures I will show you right now. And let's get closer to the truth by examining some of the things out of Mudfossil University that completely contradict these basic principles. All right, let's start with the fundamental assumptions about giants. That's a giant hand. This is a bed sheet. It's 36 inches wide. I found the fingers, the knuckle. There's more stuff been found since then. But they've been sent out, DNA certified, CAT scanned. This is the artery, right? The vein right there. That's the tubing of the vein. That's the artery. Arteries blow out of their bodily orifices because they are weak, and this is completely eroded, and it blew out, of course, the tip. This, and this are the artery. This side, which always creates this double bump, is the vein side, and they don't blow out because they have clamps. So that's the difference. That is the apical tuft. I hope you can see this bone silhouette. It's faded over the years. It's been here 5, 6 years or more. And I found other parts of that as well around here somewhere, but it's all been verified and tested in CAT scan. There's been several of them CAT scan and DNA test done. And there was 3 DNA tests done. One was done on this particular hand. Another one was done on a larger creature, drilled right out of the skin, deep into an artery of a giant fingertip. And another one was done of a normal human, of a lung, and I'll show you that. Alright, just like I showed you that distal phalanges finger just a minute ago that was all eroded, but it showed the bone pattern in there. If you showed that to anybody that knows anatomy, that's a lung. It's a human lung, and that was certified human, drilled into the end there where the blood was rich. And this is the pleura of the lung. There's no question what it is. I had an anatomist look at it. And anyway, this is DNA certified Homo sapien, modern human lung, but it's solid rock. Now, that's another lung that had deteriorated. All of the fascia and the surface stuff came off. But underneath, you see, it's got all the same. It's what it is. It's a lung. What can I say? A lung is a lung is a lung. And when it first came out of the ground, it was saturated with blood. This ran out of it. So this is real. And that giant with a 36-inch wide hand is not large by any means. Now, assumption number 2, light is what Einstein said it was, which it is not. This is light from a red laser. And you say, oh, look at that big pulse. What is that? Well, it is concussion wave of a tiny particle that is in the center here being pulsed out of a red laser, which is light. I don't care what you say. Light is light, if that's what they say. It only goes a certain speed. That's what they say, which I don't believe is true. But the particle is here. Everything else here is concussion. And all of these little dots All these little excited particles, which are all over the place, they are being concussed out, and they are being invaded. They're sending all these guys toward them and crushing into their regions. And when they do that, they glow. That's the nature of it. But the whole particle beam is a tiny little dot. This is the assumption they make, that they don't understand light. All right, I said it was a tiny little dot. There it is right there. Smash. This is two metal drums. It's a venturi. It creates an orifice, which is a venturi, which forces the incoming particles, which they are particles. You can easily see that they're particles, and you can easily see the beam, and you can easily see that they're excited, and you can easily see that they've invaded each other region and they're glowing. That is the nature of light. They are luminous particles when they try to crash into each other's regions. When they did this, they created an electronic plasma. When they came out the other side of the venturi, which is no longer in a restricted, confined space, they get poof, get away from me. They all took off as far away as they can get. The little spishy ones on the side have nobody to rein them in on each side. But the other ones push in from the sides and push each other back and forth. That's what creates the middle thing. So they push this side and they push this side. Most come here. Then another row comes, another row. That's the interference pattern from electronic pushing each other apart. They're all negative particles. That is excited light. That is plasma. This may be able to be done with protons instead of electrons, and that could be able to create fusion plasma. Then you'd have to harvest it and so forth. Whole different issue. I don't want to talk about that right now. This is the excited particles that are in the air from this enormous, incredible reverse EMF, they call it, electromotive force. And you can see it. It's very visible. You see the other visible lines of electromagnetic force? That's happening as a result of this serious interaction. Whoops, you can't see that, can you? Of this serious interaction down here is creating these reverse magnetic lines of flux. That's what's going on. Now, let's see what happens after that. All right, this is when they come out of the accelerator facing out this way. They're little streams of particles. When they crash into the surrounding particles, all that ether, it's a negative particle swishing through, which is nothing more than electricity, but it happens to be caught in the light and in a darkened situation in a correct way, and you can see the magnetic fields that surround the particle, which they would call a boson, which is a charged particle which carries a Higgs field with it, which is called the polarized Higgs field, and that is a result of crashing into something. They understand this, they just don't understand the ether. Now, all these principles are falling like dominoes. Not a thing you have heard is correct, because these are particles. Light is particles. They are not waves of nothing, massless nothing. So, what does that tell you? Coming from the sun, they're particles. What does that tell you? They are something in space. Space is not empty. It's full of these negative particles. They end up crashing into the Earth. They were something in between, and what they were is these negative particles. I'm going to call them electrons. You call them whatever you want. I believe they're thrown from their orbitals, from extreme energy interactions on the sun's surface, and shaking everything so violently that the electrons, which coat everything there is in the universe, because every molecule and every atom is surrounded by electrons, they are the things that will shake off just like little bits of paint swishing off. And they're going to go through space, and then they smash into something, create these elegant little fields. And it's called a 21 centimeter rule. If you want to look it up, you will understand that electrons occupy a very large region. Well, I might as well show you this right now. I was going to do this later. But this is what the 21 centimeter rule breaks down to. Hold on. That is the distance that hydrogen controls when it goes flowing through. When they do this on a spectrograph, on a spectroscope, they can absorb. Hydrogen is a very simple molecule, very atom, and and it has a very good signature, which is the 21 centimeter line. Now, the 21 centimeter line is on the Fraunhofer spectrum, Fraunhofer lines, which is the absorption and emission spectrum. And it absorbs this exact frequency, which is 21 centimeters, 8.2 something inches, whatever it is. Now, I measured from watching decay of electrons and measured the waves and then drew them out on here. And there was that one, there was this one, and there was that one. And there's 3 different distances, and it was water coming out of a Kelvin dropper experiment. Hold on. Okay, I'm going to finish up with the Kelvin water dropper experiment, where they send water down. It creates static electricity, ends up accumulating so much on one side and so little on the other that they jump up and they create a 15,000 volt spark. Now, I need to say this, and then I'll finish it up with the last thing. If, you know, I show what I show, and I show the evidence for it. If you address the evidence, I'm fine. But people don't address the evidence, they attack without having any understanding whatsoever about, because they never even watch what I'm talking about. So if that's only here to argue that these things don't exist and it's all fake, and have no interest in discussing the details of the things that I am against all mainstream, obviously. I am deep into scriptural text and ancient texts about titans and giants and all the things that Ovid and all these other ancient writers wrote. So if you just want to argue that these things don't exist, there's probably better places for you to go argue, because I'm not going to have it. So address what's here, and that's all. That's all I ask, and try to be respectful. That's all I've ever asked. And it doesn't seem to work out that way. What I present is attack for, I'm delusional because I present something that's rational. That is hard for me to keep working with, and so I don't. Right? So I'm trying to keep my friends, and I know who a couple guys that was attacked by, ganged up on me, just because I want to study light. Imagine that. I should just go away and study mud fossils in the woods somewhere. Well, I'm not going to do it, and I'm not going to have that. And so I've extended an olive branch. All right, let's finish this up. Thank you. All right, he hasn't responded back, and he's limited. He's only got 7 subscribers. This goes back a year, over a year. Kelvin water dropper, and it's Miroslav Leskinsky. Now, I cannot verify what he's doing here, but I do understand what I think he's doing, and the same thing. He's running the water up here, and he's shooting it down through, and I believe this time he's using neodymium magnets instead of metal buckets. So he's enhancing the effect. Secondly, he's using braided, twisted pair of copper, and it's pretty heavy copper. So first of all, you create impedance, so you build up the waves, and they collapse with twisted pairs. Now, and he's doing it on both sides. Now, whether he is shooting this in hard, I don't know. I don't think he's just letting that drop. I think he's got this under pressure, because the more pressure you put in, the more reactance you're going to get. So what he did was he created the same thing we saw before, but instead of having a jumper down below which makes a spark, he's letting it collect in these buckets until there's so much in there that it feeds back and explodes back here where it's coming through. It just won't let it come through anymore. It says, no, there's just too many, get out of the way, get out. And they start fighting like crazy, and you get sparks. I mean, watch. Now, like I say, I don't know. I can't verify that. He may have some voltage source in there. To me, it's inconsequential, because I know that's water going through there. Well, I think it is. And I'm pretty sure that's the case. And I am seeing these arcs develop, and I measured the arcs with like little things like this, and I figured out they run with that 21 centimeter rule, and then there are some shorter ones, and there's oxygen in there too. Hydrogen and oxygen make up the water, and I believe that's what's breaking up. Now watch what happens here. This is very cool. He doesn't say a word, and there's nothing, there's no documentation. Look at this. All right, you see what's happening? As this thing is shooting down there, that's water. The jet of water will start to displace. It's being pulled towards the neodymium magnet. When it is, it's starting to become so infused with electrons that they spike out of there. They say, hey, there's too many, get out of here. When they do, they go out and they shoot out in very long distances. Now, the 21 centimeter rule is 8 inches, 8.2 inches. And what I did was I went around and I measured, there's like 3 distinct distances or curves. And that would be the frequencies of the light emitted. Now, I don't know if it's right or not, but they can look at their little squiggly lines. I can look at my little squiggly lines. Look at that. All right, now you notice it stops after a while. It goes, and then it stops, and then zoom. That is the pulsation of the buildup. It has to have so many that it counteracts the new ones coming in. It's just like filling up a bucket, and it says, no, 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 and it overflows, and it says, well, you get out of here. And they say, well, if I'm going to go out in a blast. And they say, I don't care what you do, get out. And they go. You see it? Look at this. Now, you can see it's building more and more and more. There it goes. Now when it pops, it really taken off. When he first started, it was not this intense. Now, if you stop it here and then you go and start measuring these curves, you see that curve? You see that curve? You see that curve? They're all basically the same. Then you get some little ones that you're like, this is a sharp one here. Well, not really. That's one of these, I think. It might be one of those. But you sometimes you find real long ones, and they'll actually go and they'll start to turn back up, just like a wave does. And that's what I was showing before, was they're curved, but they dissipate their energy in short enough distance you don't see the full wave. But some of them, Jody and I were looking at it, and one of them was way long like that. It went up, over, and came back up, and we were very surprised to see that. And I don't think I'll ever be able to catch another one like that. You got to get it in that intense moment of the pop. Boom. No. Well, there's a good one. But you got to get it exactly when it's slamming these electrons out. Now, again, I can't even tell you this is factual, but I'm seeing these rays, to me, are rays of light. These are rays, electrons of light. See? And they have this pattern, and these are the Fraunhofer lines. So that's all I can tell you. But my point is that virtually nothing is being examined that should be examined. I've presented all this evidence. I've presented to all of the universities, the DNA-supported giant mud fossils, the light experiments, and I never had one response. So if you're not in the system, they want nothing to do with it. So belief in what is factual is only known if you can have access to what is factual, and it's not accessible right now.